So, as promised, here we are with our thoughts on what has to be an even bigger upset than England losing to Pakistan at home. This is New Zealand against India. Two matches, New Zealand 2, India nil. Nobody could have expected that. And you have to say, it hasn't been smooth sailing for Gautam Gambhir since he's taken over as coach, right? There's a lot to say, right? There's a lot to unpick. And I've got Zahid with me to do just that. The only silver lining here is obviously India still in pole position to make it to the final from the perspective of it is in their hands, right? They need to win the third test match and beat Australia in Australia to guarantee their position. Even if they don't do that, they still stand a pretty good chance, whereas others need results elsewhere to fall in their favor, just like Pakistan often tend to do all the time. But here in this case, Pakistan are completely out. But in any case, I've got Zahid with me. Zahid, look, I mean, 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, this was unheard of, right? We were lauding how India won that game against Bangladesh. They just needed literally 2 days or 1.5 days to completely demolish, and we were on record a day before saying that, oh, this will end in a 100% draw. But from that India, an India that's we started comparing to the invincible Australia of 2003, maybe not the same level, just a level slightly below, but still, one of the runaway teams of this era, to now this, where we've seen that India, like any other team, are made up of mere mortals, right? Zahid, how do you make sense of not just the result? Right? It's important not to be a result merchant here. It's about just the magnitude of results and the one-sidedness of what's happened.
Yeah, look, I think this is as surprising as Virat Kohli getting out on a full toss to a spinner, right? I think that's how surprising and shocking, just on the face of it, right? Obviously, credit to New Zealand, Mitchell Santner, and everyone,
Brilliant.
phenomenal, right? I mean, you have to give it to them. And look, I know we're not good. It's not an excuse, some of the Indian fans have been saying, "Oh, India lost it. They batted first in the first test when the conditions were tough, and then New Zealand batted first in the second test when it was a more traditional Indian." But I mean, come on, like India have still won test matches, batting second and
Losing tosses, yeah. And the
and
invincible Australia of 2003 and onwards, they lost loads of tosses, right? So if you're going to
yeah,
make that comparison, you've got to put your money where your mouth is.
yeah, and again, I don't like to compare. It's a very different situation. The Pakistan England test match and the India New Zealand. Till like what the first third of the second innings when both teams were like 70/3, and the test matches were very very parallel. Right, they were going pretty much in the same in the same position, and then it just flipped. India had a middle order collapse, and then Pakistan obviously had a lower order resurgence, and you had very different outcomes. But so that's really not the excuse from an Indian point of view. Right? You had the chance to bat on day three or day two, or part of day one and day two, which is still decent conditions to bat in, and they messed up. And if they had batted and they got a 350 or 100-run lead, they would have probably won the match anyway. So I think that is one thing to keep in mind. New Zealand batted again, and they batted probably better than India did in any case. So look, I think it's surprising to see how it's been. Questions around Jadeja and Ashwin, are they, Ashwin's been phenomenal, especially at home over the past few years. But is that time coming to an end? I know there's some questions about not Rohit Sharma as in the batter, but more his approach, where again, we had this baseball discussion in the previous episode, whether you need to sometimes, especially in the first test when the ball was swinging around and he's running down the track to, I think it was Tim Southee, right? And then he just missed it and got bored. So there is that fine tuning that needs to be done, right? And look, I mean, at the end of the day, it's all the law of averages as well. Eventually, India had to lose at home at some point, and it just
Yeah,
happened to be the series.
that's why I said at the start, it's not about the result; it's about how it happened, right? I accept that at some point India needed to lose. Freudian slip there, but it's about how, right? And I just think for such a fantastic record and era to end in such a dismal way is disappointing. Rohit Sharma, for me, whether it's Rohit Sharma, whether Gautam Gambhir has instilled in it, because previously I think India, whilst they always wanted to adapt a more aggressive brand of cricket post the 2022 T20 World Cup semi-final loss, that was there. They wanted to embrace it more in limited overs, but it was never this pronounced in tests. So I wonder if this is Gautam Gambhir coming in and wanting to leave a mark. And it's very difficult for a coach to come in and succeed another coach that just has his legacy cemented with the silverware that he's won, right? Rahul Dravid.
Yeah.
And before that, Ravi Shastri, who didn't win silverware, but molded the team to what it was. You often come in and you are fooled into thinking in your own mind, your mind fools you into thinking that you need to leave behind a legacy. And that legacy involves you making drastic, whole scale, sweeping changes from day one. Otherwise, people will just say that, oh, your success is actually Rahul Dravid's success because you're just continuing what he started. I think Gautam Gambhir, who, as we all know, has been, I wouldn't say obsessed, but has had a big part of him that worries about what people will remember him for as a player. That thought process is creeping into his coaching. And that's, I feel, the bigger problem at hand, where India feel like they have to do this and they had a lot of success against Bangladesh, and that's fair enough because we lost to them. But there needs to be a measured approach, right? Gautam Gambhir needs to realize that ultimately he's got a few years in his tenure, and the country comes first, and results of the country come first, right? Whether that's continuing what Dravid left off, fair enough, right? But
Yeah.
and that's also not easy to do. And you have other ways of cementing a legacy. Keeping the a proven process continuing. Let your top 11, the same 11, go on with that approach and use that time behind the scenes to mold your newer players, and that can be your
Yeah.
legacy. So for me, that's that style that they've been so obsessed with trying to emulate is now going to start unpicking a bit here. I hope they correct themselves against Australia, where they'll have to be a lot more sensible. They can't do these things like running down the track to Pat Cummins on a day one morning in Perth. I mean, it's just not going to happen, right? You're not going to succeed, no matter how good you are. These little things need to come into contention. My other question, I think India need have some bold decisions to make about what future they want, right? I think they missed a player like Pujara. Yes, he's old
Yeah.
fashioned. Yes, he's someone who's boring to watch. But this is the time to have him. He puts so much value to his wicket that he tires the opposition out. I think Harsha Bhogle famously says, yeah, I'll tire you out, right? My time is not now. I'll tire you out and then it'll be my time, right? And then you'll be out and I'll still be in, right? The bowler will be tired, getting treatment or freshening up whilst I'll still be playing. That mentality is missing, right? And call me old fashioned, but even England, they talk a lot about Baz ball, but their biggest reason for success is, in my opinion, not Baz ball, it's Joe Root. And Joe Root is the antithesis
Yeah.
to Baz ball, right? Why does
True.
England succeed? It's because number 4 is your probably one of the greatest test batters of all time, in my opinion, the greatest test batter of this era, Joe Root, right? You take Joe Root out, Baz ball fails. That's the
True.
importance of an anchor. And the fact that you're making Kohli and Rohit Sharma be more aggressive, just for me is a bit mind-boggling. And if you're
Yeah.
going to give them an aggressive role, then you need someone to play that boring role. And whether it's Pujara or a future Pujara, my worry is future Pujaras won't come because those players will think that their
Yeah.
style of play won't get them selected. So
Yeah, and they won't get Joe Root obviously had the history behind him. They won't get that opportunity to build that level of
exactly.
trust and confidence, right? So I think that makes. And then I mean, you've got Virat Kohli as well, right? I mean, when he's trying to smack a full toss to mid wicket in the second ball, you know, and he misses it. It did dip a little bit though, but I mean, I think there is something to be said about that. Kohli is a phenomenal player. He's as good, some might argue, as Joe Root. But yeah, I think it's just
Test.
his test matches. Yeah, his average is below 50, by the way, in case those were big Kohli fans and might be willing to cancel us on this. But yeah, look, I think Joe Root is probably a lot better. Not a lot, but he's better at the
in
moment
tests.
in tests. And maybe Kohli's form is also the reason why it's not all come together, because he's been the one who's failed, well, by his standards, not performed. So I think that's had a big
It's
issue
big.
with it.
Uh,
And also the way you someone like Sarfraz Khan, right, who's new, and the way he's gotten out 2 or 3 times, just trying to smash the ball over mid off, mid on, and
I
mid
mean,
wicket.
like, yes, you got 100. I get it. You have a lot of talent and all this, but come on,
Yeah.
and this is my worry, that they think that this is the only way. You know how it is. Sometimes you do things to make your dad proud, right? You go out of your way to make an elder person proud. And here, I think it's Gautam Gambhir, getting that coach's approval. And the same case with Brendan McCullum in England, with these new players who come in back. I need I need them to believe in me. I need their nod of approval. And that's, and look, I think it's getting a bit much now, and the reason I say this a lot with India is because they've got so much talent. There's so much batting talent. It's ridiculous. And it's a shame that temperament and legacy is, or lack of temperament and this quest for legacy is now going to get in the way. And I hope it doesn't. But that's for me. And look, Virat Kohli, we've talked a lot about him. I think he's had issues with spin also. And I think there's something to be said about Mitch Santner being an unsung hero across
Oh yeah,
formats.
absolutely.
Yes, I know he's boring. I know he's conventional. I know he's bog standard. But sometimes that's what wins you games. Consistency wins you games, right? Brilliance may win you headlines, but they don't win you, consistent success. So I think it's been terrific to see Mitch Santner. And I do think there's an element of Indian players not giving him that respect that he deserved earlier on until it was a bit too
True.
late. Right? I mean, they
Yeah,
thought,
no.
okay, Mitch Santner, in New Zealand don't have any spinners. Let's get underneath his skin earlier on. Would you get underneath a Said Ajmal skin or a Graham Swan, or I'm not talking about Moodley or Shane Warne, they're a completely different level, but other really good spinners? No, you give them the respect they deserve. Which bowlers do you get under the skin of? Those who you know are a bit vulnerable. Maybe to some extent a Shadab, definitely a Shadab Khan or a I'm sure, Jack Leach,
Yeah,
for example.
yeah.
Those you do who you know are good. So you don't want them to get settled in because you know they can be quite good when they get in and they get into rhythm. So you try and avoid them from doing so by being positive and attacking them, getting under their skin and just and no, because you know that they're mentally not the toughest. But Mitch Santner is mentally extremely strong. He's probably on par with Nathan Lyon from a mental toughness perspective, and he needs to get that respect. What do you do with those bowlers? You give them the respect. They bowl a bad ball, punish them. But otherwise, sensible cricket. That's what India didn't do, right? And I think this is a good segue. Speaking of sensible and what India have and not have from a talent perspective, and talking about KL Rahul. I'm curious to see what you have to say because you and I both have thought that he's been overrated for far too long. But has that view changed of yours, or has it been enforced even further?
I think it's slightly been enforced. It's very difficult because he randomly comes up and he plays these phenomenal innings, and then he just doesn't do anything for years, right? So he got 100 in South Africa when the conditions were tough, and then he flopped again. So it's a very difficult call. I can't even find a parallel for him because he's got so much talent. But look, I think the thing with India is they have so many other better, or not better, but so many other players to choose from that it's just very difficult to sustain yourself in the team with that performance. I think that's the issue that they have with KL Rahul. Um, and also just a more broader point, it's again, I'm sure this was not the case from an Indian perspective, but before the series, you asked anyone around performance and stuff, you're like, oh, 3-0, there's going to be 3-0, 3-0, 3-0. Was there a sense of complacency in there, right? I mean, I think that's the other thing that goes into it. I mean, of course, you wouldn't expect Sharma and Kohli to have that in, or Bumrah to have that in them. But when everyone around you is taking this for granted, and then you get rolled over 46 on day one, it must count for something.
No, I definitely agree. The invincibility shines off or whatever. So,
Yeah.
but speaking, I'm glad you brought up Bumrah because we
Oh,
hadn't touched on him. Look, Bumrah was phenomenal in the World Cup, right? But this is a different format, and this is probably the mother of all formats. And people started saying, "Oh, he's going to end up better than Wasim Akram, Glenn McGrath, and all." But we've always maintained that the real stature of fast bowling or any sort of bowling is Test cricket.
yeah.
Jasprit Bumrah's had a few lean test matches. Do anything to worry about? No. You'll open up your record books and you'll see even the best of
Yeah,
bowlers like Glenn McGrath and Wasim Akram had bad matches or bad series. It happens. But
yeah,
whenever that happens, that's just a sign for you to just adapt your game a little, right? Has it been that a lot of his success has been focused on limited over tricks, like, you know, the use of slower balls a lot more frequently and that sort of stuff, strategies that work in limited overs? does did he focus too much on that in the last few months, and justifiably so, and therefore needs to hone in on his more conventional swing and seam skills? Perhaps, I don't know.
yeah,
I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with Bumrah. I just think sometimes, and it's tough when you're an all format leader of an attack, it's quite tough to just focus on all the skills at the same time. But this, if ever there was an example of how the skill set required in all formats of the game can be so different, not just for batters but also bowlers, here it is.
yeah,
And I think with sensible sort of prioritization, I'm sure he will end up being probably India's greatest ever fast bowler.
yeah,
But I don't think he's at that level that he was catapulted to when everyone compared him to the likes of Wasim and Glenn McGrath and, like, the Dennis Lee
yeah,
and all that. I mean,
yeah,
not that, because those people were all format wizards, right? They didn't play T20 cricket, I accept that, but limited overs, they were death ball specialists also.
yeah.
So he will get there. I just think everyone just needs to give him that time and breathing space to do so.
Yeah, I mean, let's see, in 5, 7 years' time where he is. But I think it's in typical South Asian fashion. We've got the ability to, or we always hype up overhype players or bring them down quickly.
Yeah, no,
So
some of the people we overhyped. Like, I remember Hassan Ali in 2017. They're like, oh, this guy's gonna like change the world, and I'm like, not quite happened, has it?
yeah,
So there is
so
a complacency, but I think Bumrah is a
yeah,
thorough professional. So
yeah. Look, I think he is. I mean, yeah, I think can't compare to Hassan Ali. Yeah, that is insulting, but but yeah, I think we need to give him more time before we start putting him in at that level. And it's also longevity and consistency and stuff that makes a
big
big
difference. Yeah,
difference.
yeah, in your legacy.
Um, but yeah, look, I think overall, fantastic, win for New Zealand. We've still got one Test match to go. Let's see how that pans out. But yeah, I think questions for India. I'm not sure how who knows, they might still go and win in Australia. Obviously, Jaiswal is a big positive for them.
Massive.
Rishabh, Sarfraz Khan, that 100, yes, he played really well, but his consistency is again going to be a question. And I'd like you say in Australia they do need someone like a Pujara or Rehane, who was kind of were the masterminds or the kind of the core of the team's victory last time round in Australia. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. But yeah, there you have it. Good win for New Zealand. Let's see what our Indian fans have to say. No trolls. The
The
only I'd
one
say is,
point I'll just make is
go
I
on.
think this is a really good lesson on how to adapt, how New Zealand have adapted in a post star batter era. Right? We're all
Yeah,
going to get into a position where it'll be a post Kohli, post Root, post Smith. I don't want to say post Babar Azam just yet, but I think we're already there. No, I'm kidding. But all these post eras, in the post Williamson era, New Zealand have found one, talent, right, in Rachit Ravindra and all, and two, clear roles, clarity of roles for everybody.
yeah,
Tom Latham and all these players may not be the most talented players around, but they have clear cut roles and responsibilities. And that's the key to succeeding when a star player of the ages,
yeah,
Kane Williamson is probably the greatest New Zealand batter of
yeah,
all time. When they retire, it's a big vacuum that's left.
yeah,
And the only way is through just discipline and like through
yeah,
ensuring that you have a process in place and trust that eventually the gap will be filled. So I think
yeah.
post Williamson era, I think New Zealand are going to be a big contender.
Yeah. I think someone's already has always stepped up. That's been the biggest thing, right?
That's the
Whether
thing.
it's Conway, Latham, Ravindra, Rachin, someone's always stepped up and done the job. I think, and that makes a big difference. The only
A
thing I'd say
country
at
that
the
has
end,
more sheep than people, I think.
yeah, exactly. The
Yeah,
only
yeah.
thing I'd say at the end is, India's 36 all out in Adelaide or 36 for 9 Adelaide. It kind of got people mention it, but maybe because India ended up winning that series fantastically, probably doesn't get as mentioned as much in the trolling community. But maybe this 46 might just as well surpass
Or
that.
it might propel them
Just
into even greater heights. You never know, and
you
that's
never know.
the beauty of cricket. Thanks, Zahid, and there's a lot more coming your way. Don't forget to subscribe. We didn't get to 823 subscribers at the end of the Pakistan England series, but we are on the way up, and with your help, we can get there. So please continue to support us. Thank you.
Thank you.